Guys, welcome back from spring break. I kind of took a little bit of a break um for spring break and didn't answer any emails or anything like that. I'm going to be getting to them all today, catching up. There are a few. There's some students who've asked me for different assignments to help make up grades and things like that. So I'll be getting to everything today. What we're working on right now and talking about is what's called the Protestant Reformation. It was basically a time period in history where you have this dude, Martin Luther, okay, who goes and nails the 95 Theses to the door on the German Catholic Church and says, I have a problem with you guys. This is what you're doing, not fair. A lot of you guys have picked up on the idea of indulgences where people could pay to get relief from their sins. So the more money that you had, the more sins you could commit and still be innocent and still be fine. So I think it's incredibly interesting because then Martin Luther comes forward and he goes, got a problem with this. He was not the only one who had problems with it, and he was not the only one involved in reforming the church either. So today I'm going to actually talk about the saga of King Henry VIII, who was a king in England, and what went on with him, because his life is full of drama. Um, and so a lot of these concepts we're talking about are things you're going to hear about in pop culture or outside of the classroom, or you'll hear about in songs or all sorts of other things, especially King Henry VIII. Martin Luther is important. This Reformation is important so that you understand how we went from just a Catholic church to many, many churches. So when I pick and choose what we're learning about, it's things to prepare you for next year, but also things that you understand like in our culture, and you understand things that are just thrown out there. Like King Henry VIII, you should know who that dude is because you're going to hear references to him, not just here in my classroom, but in outside of the classroom for years to come. Okay, so with that, so you have a lot of other reformers. Martin Luther is the major one. He's the one who gets the most credit for starting the Protestant Reformation. However, there are multiple other ones who did things like translated the Bible into a language that other people could understand, because most people spoke what's called a colloquial language, which is basically your common language, but everything by the church was done in either Latin or Greek. And so most people did not speak Latin or Greek. They might have spoke English, or they might have, well, early version of English, or they might have spoken German, or they might have spoken Italian, or many of the other languages we know about, Spanish. Okay. And so these people who are translating the Bible into the colloquial languages or the common languages are basically saying everybody needs to be able to read the Bible. It shouldn't be this priest saying the Bible says da 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 in Latin, and guess what? This is what it means. So you should be able to read the common language. So that is a major piece that happens. You have other people who start other churches, some people who go really extreme and start churches that maybe not be around today, or make really like the Protestants are like, nah, they crazy. They way crazy. And then there's other people who are much more like the Lutherans, who base their religion on Martin Luther and what he does. So today I'm going to give you guys a slideshow. You're going to kind of look these people up and match the names of the people with the descriptions of what they did. So King Henry VIII is one of those people, but he did not reform the church because of his beliefs about the church being bad. He reformed the church for his own personal reasons. So King Henry VIII was a man, and he was very athletic and very well versed in different languages. He was very well trained, and he was a nice looking king at the time. Okay, at the time, and how he ends up at the end. Anyway, so he married this woman named Catherine of Aragon. Now, Catherine of Aragon, she had a lot of miscarriages. She had a lot of stillborn babies, which means the baby is born but not alive. But she had one daughter that survived, and her name was Mary. Mary the First. So she had this baby, but she could not have a boy. And King Henry VIII, he really wanted a boy, because in England at the time, the person who becomes king first is the boy. And the idea is to have that boy because he becomes king and you want to carry on that lineage and all this other stuff. And so he had a problem with Catherine. They were married for 23 years and she had one daughter. Okay. So it came to a point that she was not having any more kids, and it came to a point in her life where she couldn't have any more kids. And King Henry VIII was not happy. So he went to the Pope and he said, Pope, can you please give me a divorce? I would like to annul this marriage. An annulment means basically the marriage never happened in the Catholic Church. And the Pope says, can't do that for you. You've been married for 23 years, can't do that. And there's some political pressure too, because Catherine of Aragon is actually the daughter of she was the daughter of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand in Spain. So Spain is a very, very, very Catholic country. And you don't want the Pope doesn't want to upset the Spain, and he doesn't want to upset the the king and queen, and so he's like, can't do that, sorry. And so King Henry VIII goes, okay, well, I'll find another way. So he gets somebody else, to an archbishop, to basically give him the divorce that he wants, or the annulment that he wants. And the Pope goes, I told you no. And he goes to excommunicate Henry VIII. And Henry VIII goes, no, I'm the king, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start my own church so that I can get a divorce anytime I want. And not only that, I'm going to start the church, and then I'm going to be the head of the church. So he basically creates his own church that is identical to the Catholic Church, except he is now the head of the church. Everything else is the same. Okay? And so now he's able to get his divorce, and he marries this woman named Anne Boleyn. And with Anne Boleyn, now, first of all, I think he was like, he and Anne Boleyn were good friends beforehand. And Anne Boleyn kind of gave him an idea. But Anne Boleyn actually had a daughter, and her name was Elizabeth. And she didn't have a son. And so again, King Henry VIII, what did he want? A son. And they're not exactly sure what she got tried for and why he had her killed, but he had her beheaded. Some say it might have been because she was good friends with another person and he was jealous, or maybe it was because he was just really irritated because he loved Catherine of Aragon, and then all of a sudden he needs to get a divorce. So there's a lot of question about exactly why he had her killed, but he had her head cut off. So now he's single and he needs to get a son. So he marries another woman by the name of Jane Seymour, and Jane Seymour produces a son. And so he has the son, Edward, and he is a really, really sickly little boy, but that makes King Henry VIII very, very happy. However, Jane Seymour dies shortly after childbirth, and now King Henry VIII is single again and going for his fourth wife. So he then marries another woman named Anne of Cleves. And that was something where he had kind of got hooked up with her. And remember, marriages are this political or a business deal that we talked about. And they were like, you should get married to her. She's so beautiful. Here's a portrait of her. And then he was like, all right, get married to her. Let's do this. And then he sees her and he was like, ugh. And she's called the ugly wife, which is horrible. And he said that too. So he stayed married to her for 6 months to get that business deal done. And then he divorced her. So now he's done with 4 wives and going for the 5th, right? So he then marries another woman by the name of Catherine Howard. Catherine Howard is 19 years old and he is almost 50. Can you imagine? 19-year-old marrying an almost 50-year-old. He is not doing so well. He could hardly walk because he'd had this injury in sports and it never healed quite. Like it was always kind of an open wound. He wasn't walking very well. And so he marries her. She doesn't have any kids. Yeah, and then Anne of Cleves she didn't have any kids either, the ugly wife. And so basically what happens is that there were rumors that she was involved with somebody else. And so he had her head cut off. So now he's done 5 wives. Now he gets his 6th. His 6th was named Catherine Parr, and she ends up outliving him by about a year. So King Henry VIII had a total of 6 wives, 3 kids, 1 boy. Okay. What happens then is that So he's considered a reformer of the church, even though he didn't do it for religious purposes. He did it for political and his own personal reasons, right? So what happens is then his son, Edward, becomes the king. Problem with Edward is he's really, really sick. Okay, he is a sickly child, and he dies at the age of 15. So remember when we talked about having a regent and what that is? He probably had a regent during his whole rule because he's too young to really rule very well. And at 15, he dies. Like he comes to the throne at a young age, he dies at 15. So what happens now is, the boy comes to rule first, and now it's the daughter's turn. So the daughter that comes to the rule is named Mary. Now, Mary, she's interesting because her mom was Catherine of Aragon, his original, King Henry VIII's original wife. And she, when King Henry VIII, when he divorces her mom, basically Mary gets kicked out of the whole entire, like, not realm but out of the kingdom kind of thing. She's no longer a princess, so she kind of loses that rank, and so she's not going to be very happy with her father. Not only that, but King Henry VIII is considered an Anglican, okay, or Protestant now. And Mary, she's very Catholic. Her mom was Catholic. She is Catholic. And so she doesn't agree with her father's religion either. And so during her upbringing, she had gotten kicked out of the kingdom. Okay. And she basically, then her sister is born, who's Elizabeth I, and she has to serve her sister. She becomes a lady in waiting. She's a servant to her younger sister. And so she's got some anger at her father, but her father has the power. So she wants to make him happy too. And so he basically goes, no, you have to, you have to say that your mom wasn't your mom if you want to be my daughter and possibly be queen one day. So it's pretty messed up because he basically tells her she needs to give up on her mom to basically become queen one day. So she kind of does a little bit. But then when her dad dies and then when her brother dies, she becomes queen. And now it's game on. First of all, she looks at England and she goes, I don't know what my dad was doing. I don't know what Edward was doing with leaving everything Protestant. England is now Catholic. And so she basically forces England to become Catholic, and she kills not her personally, but she has over 300 people executed who are Protestants just to bring that Catholic religion back to England. She also gets married to a man by the name of Philip, who is Spanish, and he and her are like, they don't really love each other. It's a business deal, right? So they don't really love each other, but she wants a child so bad so that she can go ahead and continue the line. Because if she has a child, then her sister Elizabeth will not become queen. But she never has a child. But what she does have are what are called false pregnancies, where she thinks she's pregnant for a long time, and then all of a sudden, time for the baby to be due, and she's not. Her body makes it look like, or makes it feel like she's pregnant too. And so she never has a child. And so she's grief stricken. She's horribly sad. And so, she's killing all these Protestants, and she becomes known as Bloody Mary. People hate her. Not only that, but she brought England into a war to help support Spain. And people hate that they had to go to war with Spain with this husband that she doesn't even love very much, and that doesn't really love her or doesn't come around. And so it's really, really sad. Her life is really, really tragic. She ends up dying, and they believe one of her false pregnancies probably had to do with the fact that she died of ovarian cancer, which means, that reproductive area that women have, there was cancer in there, and that was probably why she thought she was pregnant, which is so sad to think about. So she ends up dying of ovarian cancer and leaving no children whatsoever. And from her, the legend of Bloody Mary comes. And so they think that legend of Bloody Mary, where you can look in the mirror, Bloody Mary, and all of a sudden she appears, is probably mixed up with the legend of La Llorona, where she is mourning the kids that were drowned. So it's somehow connected because, remember, she married a Spanish king. So that's kind of how the legend of Bloody Mary came to be. So she's considered also a reformer, but it was more out of spite and more like because she was Catholic and not because of like, let's change this religion and make it better. So it was one of those like backlashes to the Protestant Reformation. There were a lot of wars that happened because of that, a lot of death. Um, Last but not least, Elizabeth I, her sister, becomes queen after Mary dies. And Elizabeth I stays queen for a long time, never marries, never has any kids, but is considered one of the best queens or kings, but one of the best monarchs in England's history. Now, remember, there's a little bit of a rivalry between them, right? Mary had a serve her sister, not very happy because, well, now guess what? They are buried next to each other in Westminster Abbey for the rest of their existence. So that's the story of King Henry VIII, along with Mary I, and a little bit Elizabeth I. We'll get more into her when we talk about the Renaissance. But it's important to talk about them. It's important to know pop culturally. It's significant because now you know where Bloody Mary came from. So you guys be safe, be healthy. I miss you guys. I hope you guys are all doing well. And I will post another video on Wednesday. Bye.